Well, there's a statue here. Oh, we're here already. That's fast. So we went through a house, we got a few abolitionists killed, and now we're here. There's no loot there, right? Just want to check every corner. Alright, so now we're at this place, whatever this place is. Odemus Patria Nostra Defendere. Comstock fights the Serpent of Nations. The Serpent of Nations is Jews, Chinese, and Africans. So Comstock kills Jews, Chinese, and Africans. There you go. Racism. Well, suddenly everything is dark for no good reason. There's your next-gen graphics for you. Suddenly everything is dark for no good reason. Alright, let's go in here. So this is the next place. So this is... it's like a fun house kinda, because you go through... you walk along a path and you see interesting things along the way. And so the next interesting thing is this thing. Order of the Raven is the next interesting thing for us to look at. And there's ravens crapping all over the fruit. Yay! So that's a really white guy. That's another really, really white guy. And that's another really, really white guy. And that's yet another really, really white guy. They're really white. They're not just, you know, not just white, but they're really white. John Wilkes Booth. This was the guy who killed Lincoln, right? So not only do they worship the founding fathers, or so they say, they worship the guy who killed the abolitionist. Although there's a lot of raven crap in here. Not sure what that's about. Alright, let's try to sneak. I saw a guy here earlier. Okay, there they are. Let's try to sneak. I believe they will attack you. Actually, I don't know, do I? Should I just... let me walk the other way. I want to try and sneak up on someone and beat them in the head from behind. Press C to look. The game tells you to stand up. No, man, I'm trying to sneak. Wait, why did he just stand up and turn around? Why did he do that? Hold on. Sorry about that. A brief interruption, you shouldn't notice much. Alright, so we was crouching. That guy just stood up and turned around even though I was crouching. He's still there. Nope. No. No, there's no sneaking. There's no sneaking of any sort. You thought you could be clever in this game. You thought you could be sneaky in this game. No. Not a chance. What is that sound? What? Shut up. So there's no... literally there is no way to be clever with the combat. Like, you try to sneak up and he turns around immediately and then stays that way. There's no way to be clever. What is that? That's Lincoln, the devil? Literally flying around burning cities. Amazing. And then that is... who is that? I can't see that, it's too bright. Is that... Washington? I think that's Washington. Washington as God. Unknown booze. I don't want to drink. Okay, let's pick this up.
And when the angel Columbia gave unto the founders the tools to build a new Eden, they did so without hesitation. For 85 years they prepared the way of the Lord. But when the great apostate came, he brought war with him, and the fields of Eden were soaked with the blood of brothers. The only emancipation he had to offer was death.
Alright, so Lincoln is the great apostate. Alright. These guys are amusing. But they are rewriting history, and sometimes people try to do that. What does that say? Protecting our race. Right. Your race. The great apostate. Who is the Angel Columbia? I don't even know who that's supposed to be. Is it a dead rabbit? I think it is. And then... Oh, ravens, so there you go. So there's the saint killing the apostate Lincoln right there. That's funny. Alright, so there's these guys. You can see where they're coming from. If you don't know your American history, then maybe you should just look that up. Look up Lincoln. Do I need to explain American history, really? So the Civil War, the North, so there's a North and a South. The problem was, at the time, was that the American economy, the South, the southern states relied on a slave economy. So the slaves worked the cotton fields, and they kind of used the free labor to harvest cotton, sell cotton to make money. That's what the South. Whereas in the North, there wasn't there was slavery, but they didn't really rely on the slaves for their economy. So then, at some point, people wanted to emancipate the slaves because the fact that they were slaves didn't really fit with the ideals of liberty and freedom, right? Which is what the Americans kind of said they were about. So, you know, the abolitionists gained momentum, especially in the North, where the slaves were not really economically essential. But in the South, the slaves were economically essential for those plantations to work. Well, maybe they weren't, but you know, that's how the economy was set up at the time. So, you know, after a while, the southern states decided, I'm abbreviating a lot, but the southern states decided to secede from the Union because they didn't want to give up their slaves. And so then there was a civil war over that. And whether the slaves, I mean, there were other issues too, but the big thing was the slaves. And the fact that they would become emancipated. And in order to win the war, the northern states, or the southern states, they called themselves the Confederate States of America, and the North was the United States of America. And the North once the Civil War started, the Union, the North, kind of reiterated their purpose to emancipate the slaves, because doing so would kind of split the South, because the South, they were the landowners, the white people, and the slaves, the black people. But the North could turn the southern slaves against the slave masters by promising them freedom. So when they did that, like a lot of once the slaves were freed, or even if they weren't free, they tried to escape. They was trying to escape to the North and then kind of join the Union Army to kind of fight for their freedom. And so, you know, kind of strategically, it was not really... Strategically, it was mostly in the Union's favor. Like, the Confederates didn't really have much to stand on. They had a few good generals. Robert E. Lee was a pretty good general. But they didn't, strategically, they were in a bad position anyway. So eventually, the Union won. And the Confederates were, you know, reattached to the United States. And the slaves were freed. And that's Lincoln's job. And Booth assassinated Lincoln. Lincoln was, if I remember right, he was the only American president to serve 3 terms. And people were afraid that he might become a dictator at some point, because he was kind of getting too comfortable in that position, and so he got killed. John Wilkes Booth was the guy who killed him. But yeah, so that's the kind of the short version. You might want to do your own research and find the long version of that story, not really of that history. Alright, so now here we are.
And so, the prophet led us into Peking. nation our founders have given us. And when the mandarins and hypocrites of Washington betrayed him, our prophet did not heal. He did not come crawling for their forgiveness. Like our fathers broke from the great apostate, our prophet broke with these so-called patriots. And today is the day we celebrate this secession.
Yeah, so these guys are pretty proud of the fact that they broke away from the Union and continued to bomb the Chinese, and then to continue to enslave black people. So they're quite proud of their white supremacy. You would assume that you can shoot that guy from here, but you can't, because he's invincible at this point and he just runs away from you if you do that. Let's do that, see if that helps. Oh, it helped a little bit. These guys are also wearing the pointy hats of the Ku Klux Klan, although they're not white pointy hats. But the symbolism is pretty clear, the pointy hats, and the sword and the crosses and all that. What the? Alright. So, the pointy hats and the clan. So the symbolism is difficult to miss unless you've been living under a rock for the past 2 centuries or something. It's pretty difficult to miss what's going on here. Racism. Alright, so let's go through here. But you see how the combat is, like, you walk into a room, or you walk into a house, you look at the paintings, you listen to the audio, and you shoot some guys. I feel like the shooting the guys is not really an important part of the game. Like, the story is really what this game really wants to sell, and the shooting part is just stuff you kind of need to put into a game.
What exactly was the great emancipator emancipating the Negro from? From his daily bread, from the nobility of honest work, from wealthy patrons who sponsored them from cradle to grave, from clothing and shelter. And what have they done with their freedom? Why, go to Finkton and you shall find out. No animal is born free, except the white man. And it is our burden to care for the rest of creation.
Key. Interesting. Yeah, so he's talking about the white man's burden. Again, it's a theme of racists that, because they're so convinced of their superiority, they believe that if left to their own devices, all the other people in the world would just mess themselves up. So then it's their duty to show the other people what to do with their lives. So there's your history of racism, if you're interested. So this is a pretty famous painting of this game. 10 Commandments, the Liberty Bell, white people, and then there's, I don't know who that is. There's the Native American, there's the Indian, there's the Chinese, there's the Irish. Even the Irish are not white enough for the white guys here. And then we got, that's a Buddhist? Don't know where he's from though. There's the Jew, there's the other Native American, hold on, there's the one Native American, there's the other Native American, there's a Mexican, there's another Chinese, and then there's a South American, Native South American. So there we go. For God and country. And everybody's looking up to Washington? Yes, Washington. So that's not really what Washington intended, but people sometimes appropriate history for their own purposes. Racism.
Shortly after 1 o'clock this afternoon, the scoundrel, believed now by many to be Vox Populi, began his terrible rampage. Trouble began almost instantly. Full of wrath and bent on harm, the anarchist maliciously wounded several Colombian peacemakers, before then arming himself and firing into an assemblage of virtuous fairgoers. As of this hour, he is considered wholly responsible for causing at least 8 God-fearing Colombians to meet their maker in heaven. He is considered brimming with danger and evil intent, and we implore you not to tempt ruination by facing him without aid of Colombia's finest. Now, back to the music.
Yes. So we're an anarchist. Let me just turn that off. We're an anarchist, and we killed a lot of people apparently. But you can kind of see how basically the game is telling you that they are twisting the truth, and Nina is kind of obvious now if you haven't noticed. So they're twisting the truth, and by pointing out that they're twisting your actions, I guess they're pointing out that other things might also not be entirely true.